Hello and welcome to Springboard, your virtual university. My name is Albert Okran, welcoming you on behalf of Team Springboard. This is your most inspirational show in that place where the biggest minds in the world converge. Springboard is brought to you by the Springboard Roadshow Foundation and proudly sponsored by MTN Pulse and the Enterprise Group with media support from the Multimedia Group and the Graphic Communications Group. So, in today's fast-paced world, communication is the centerpiece of everything that we do. It comes up wherever you pass. And we are reminded over and over again that we sometimes talk, but we don't connect. How do we get it right? And how can it help us to build our careers and move our lives forward? I have just the right person to unpack a conversation about comms trends and everyday tips for the professional seeking to do well in life. In the studio with me today is our good friend, Comfort and I, our very good friend, and the group head of marketing and corporate affairs at Hollard Ghana, comms consultant for 14 years plus, and guess what? Board chair here at the Springboard Roadshow Foundation, Cynthia Ofori-Dwumfuo. Cynthia, good to see you.
Thank you very much for having me, and good to see you as well.
Yeah, it's always good.
Indeed.
And if I may say so, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
And for those who are asking
why
on being a mother,
yes.
how does it feel?
It's a very new experience. I've done a lot of things, but this is for sure a very, very new experience for me. So I'm learning, making mistakes, and figuring it out. But the little one is such a joy. So I'm blessed.
I can imagine.
I'm blessed.
We thank God for every blessing.
Yes, indeed.
So today we want to talk about comms. I was listening recently to a presentation on planning, and then comms came in. We go to church and comms is there. We pass left comms, right comms. How big is communication as a part of our lives?
Yes. I think people underestimate what communication is and how it impacts our lives. I don't think people realize that, communication is the very being of what we are as human beings. Essentially, it's the impartation and the exchange of information. Every single thing we do, whether it's engineering, robotics, it is arts, culture, it's all about communication. We use communication to live as people. And communication is what we thrive on. Without communication, there's no us, essentially. So the sooner we recognize it, the better. And, realize that it's not as simple as, social media, or as simple as making phone calls or having a conversation. It's really how we engage with the people in our community. So if we learn how to communicate better, it would really help us to be better people, whether it's in our public lives or in our personal lives.
So if I understand you right, you're saying that it's not just even about our work alone.
Yes.
It's about everything that we do.
Absolutely. It's about everything.
We'll come to some of the biggest mistakes that we make in communicating or in trying to communicate. But let's start from trends. What are some of the trends in communication that we will need to note as we try to become better at what we do?
Right. So I think the biggest trend everybody knows is that the world is now highly visual. So we are working in a world that everything is multimodal. So, you click on your phone, everything you see is, high fidelity images, moving images. It's exciting. So now in this world that we live in, a major communication trend is being able to deliver content in a way that people can visually be stimulated. So that's one major trend. Then there's also the fact that people want more personalized information. So whether it's personalized in terms of, engagement with their customers, or personalized in terms of even family information, there's that as well. Then there is the undeniable fact that people want information on demand. They want to engage on demand at their convenience, and that's also, for maybe boomers and older people, that's a bit difficult to, get used to, because back in the day, everything was direct and immediate and at the behest of the person requesting. Now people want you to send a WhatsApp message so that they can read it when they are ready to read it and respond when they're ready to respond. And you find that people get offended because they say, I sent you this message 5 hours ago. You are online, but you haven't responded. So it's a very interesting world we are living in terms of those trends. on-demand information, and on-demand information even applies to everything online and offline as well, I might add. So even things like engagements, when you go out there, you realize the activations are now very interesting. People want to come to you at their interest, not yours. So that has sort of changed how things, how things are in this world. And of course, today's world is very fast. So if you add all of these things together, it's actually an exciting time that we are living in. I don't think the world has been this exciting in generations.
You operate in the field, so you say it's exciting. But I want us to break it down for the benefit of this person watching us who's a medical practitioner.
Right.
This person who's an engineer who can't even understand why all this big fuss about fast moving images and the way people want to consume information. Yeah. How does the architect relate to it? How does the pastor relate to it? So let's take it into a couple of professional areas. How does the barber relate to this? So that the person listening can see that it is not just some abstract thing you're talking about on a day-by-day basis. These things you talk about, you talk about three things. The fact that people want information right on time. You've broken it down to the trends that we are seeing. How do these trends impact our professional lives?
So whether architects like it or not, or barbers like it or not, this is the way the world is. So you find that now architects are sharing their drawings, not in a simple drawing format. Nowadays, what we want to see renderings, So if an architect is presenting his drawings, no longer are they just showing up with parchment paper with all of these intricately drawn lines. Now they are presenting beautiful renderings because that's what sells what they are sharing.
Will what you call renderings be that experience where you can literally visually walk through the building and turn right, turn left, and you can literally feel the spaces and the...
Yes. So the renderings, because they're selling a dream to their customer. So the architect selling the dream to the customer knows the customer cannot relate to the lines on the paper. The customer can relate to what they can see. So in sharing with the customer the 3D form of the house or the building or the, whatever institution, that customer is able to say, wow, I see the vision. I see what you're trying to say. I can see myself in this space. Hence, I think you're spot on. Let's go ahead with your drawing. So the architects might think that, I don't really have to deal with communication. But what they are doing now that they think are trends in their work actually comes back to communication, because now they are trying to be more relatable. They are trying to present more, like I mentioned, high fidelity images, high quality visuals in order to get their customers to see what they want to see. And it's also about storytelling. Nowadays, guess which people are also getting a lot of following on social media? Hairdressers and barbers. So, yes, so you see a barber, you think your barber is just like some guy in the corner. The barber is an influencer on social media because now they are doing short, fun videos about haircuts, the before, the after, TikTok style videos. And what's happening is that this barber is getting customers coming from, maybe he's in Chado, he's getting customers coming from Kaswa because he's the coolest barber on social media. So people need to see that these trends are not outside of what they are doing. They're actually either what they're already practicing that they could get better at, or they are trends that they could actually adopt for their own sake to communicate better. So whatever your profession is, and you may think that your profession is so serious, aka maybe some professor of mathematics, but even in that field, the art of communication is important because now the young people consume information in bite-sized formats, right? Bite-sized pieces. I remember when I was in tech, I did economics, and I remember I was studying econometrics. Goodness, that was such a time.
This is one thing we have in common.
Like, I can always remember seeing all of those formula and just being like, I do not know what is going on. But now what's happening is that young people are watching, understanding short visuals that show, explain the concepts better, which ultimately help the professors because now when they are teaching the formulas, the students get it better. So a professor who wants to be at the top of his game can decide that, okay, we are studying differentials or this and that. How do we approach it today? Maybe let's look at it in a real world context. So all of this comes down to communication. And the sooner people recognize that, the better they are able to, do better at communicating. So All round, I mean, I obviously find the field very interesting and exciting, but because I think that regardless of where you are, communication skills apply. So,
Let's talk about potential cost savings that could come out of leveraging
yeah.
some of these crazy, if I may call them so, interesting concepts that you are using, visuals, and information on demand,
Yes.
all these things you're talking about,
Yeah.
the renderings,
Yeah.
the experience.
I'll
Can
give you an
they lead
example.
to cost savings? Because I hear
Absolutely.
people relate better to things when you say that they will save money.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Or
Absolutely.
or they will make more money.
Absolutely. And I'll give you an example in my work. We have started to do a lot of on-demand and digital engagements. So I want to move away from what you might think is social media, visuals, and whatnot. Now, customers don't want to walk into offices to do things. They want things to come to them. So what's happening now is people are engaging. So all of our salespersons are engaging on WhatsApp. They are selling policies on WhatsApp. They are engaging people on WhatsApp, on phone. So now people literally are sitting in their homes and getting things sorted for them. And that's even on the human side. There's a digital side where now you have all these chatbots and all these digital means of communications that actually enable processes. Now, at the end of the day, what this means is it's cheaper for you to secure a customer, which means that your costs have reduced. Your salespeople do not necessarily always have to go out there and be physically present in order to close a sale. That is one, cheaper transportation costs. Then also there's the fact that even for your customers, they find you more appealing because it's easier to, sign up for your products. Now, at the end of the day, if you also jump onto these new trends, right? Somebody will say, instead of doing a fantastic, which is not a bad idea at all, a fantastic TVC, a TV commercial, which might cost you several hundreds of thousands of CDs if you're a big business looking to do a high quality commercial. And you say, okay, I'm going to use influencers or do some short videos. What's going to happen is you probably spend a fourth of the amount of money you'd have spent on the TV commercial. And, you would have spread that money across several influencers, gotten very relatable content that you would share. And at the end of the day, make savings. So there's so much that you can get out of being smart with communications at this point in time. And I think that the time is ripe.
Okay, let's go on to so that is the pull factor. That
Yes.
it will save you some cost.
Yes.
You will reach your clients faster. You can
Yes.
operate in spaces
Yes.
you couldn't be before. But let's go to the push factor, the mistakes that you could commit if you are not up to date with these trends. And let's speak to the everyday professional trying to better their job. How can not being adept at communications cost any kind of professional?
So just as we are living in a fantastic world, it's also the worst time to make mistakes. Let's be real. When you make a mistake now, it can go far. Back in the day, you make a mistake in your office with a presentation and it stays there in the office. Now you make a mistake with the presentation that is being zoomed across several continents. What happens? Now everybody knows Kojo Safo said this or mispresented or...
If there's somebody called Kojo Safo, you say
forgive me, Kojo Safo. Just an example.
I know, right?
Exactly. So Kojo Safo, once again, will make a mistake that the whole world will know about. So that is also now part of the problems of the world we live in. You need to be clear before you get out there so that there's no misrepresentation of what you are sharing. And when I'm saying sharing, I don't mean necessarily speaking. It could be content. It could be anything, So now it's become more important than before to be absolutely clear with what you are saying. It's important enough to avoid misrepresentation and misunderstandings. It's important that you also clarify with your audience what it is that they need. So this comes to know your audiences. So if you know your audience, what happens is you are better able to give them what they want, communicate in a manner that works for them. So then you avoid making mistakes. You can't go and talk to, let's say, a host of pastors and be talking about some gangster things, or using all kinds of language, because that's an inappropriate reference to use with pastors, for instance. So knowing your audience helps.
That same reference could probably fit a different audience.
Absolutely. That same reference might suit a group of young men who are easily, they're in their cool phase of their life where such references would land with them. So you need to know your audience in order to avoid misunderstanding. Now, one thing I also like to say is because misunderstandings happen, it is better to confront misunderstandings immediately and head on to avoid more misunderstandings. Because what happens is when there is confusion and misunderstandings, there are lots of assumptions that people make. And when people make assumptions, jump to conclusions, it's a downward spiral. Things don't get better. It just keeps on getting worse. And then you end up in a hole where you're communicating across purposes and no one is landing their message. There's no meeting in the middle.
At this point, I'm sure a number of politicians have tuned in to find out what to do about something they said on one platform 2 years ago that is getting worse every year.
Every time they speak, they show that.
Let me go back to prevention before we come to the cure.
Okay.
Because you've opened up what they call a Pandora's box.
Yes.
Because here you are saying something you say can become an albatross around your neck for years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's go back to how do you prevent saying what you may not have intended that could become a big
Right.
milestone around your neck.
So
in preparing, what do you do to avoid that kind of
Right.
situation?
I would say that in preparing, what I started with, know your audience is important. Know your message is another thing. Now, let me take us back to school, and forgive me for using communication terminology.
Still there.
When you're communicating, you don't realize it, but you're using what we call rhetorical appeals, persuasive language. Now, in persuading people, what we don't realize is that we actually, in order to persuade people very well, you need to have ethos, which is essentially credibility and authority. So who are you to say what you're saying? However you're saying it, in what format? Are you a person who is knowledgeable? Where are you coming from to stand on that? Right? Then
Hold on right there.
Yes.
So what you're saying with ethos is that something that somebody by virtue of their clout can see.
Absolutely, your
If
credibility.
you mount the same podium with the same audience and you say it, they can see, who are you to say it?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Why?
Because by human nature, we respect people that we know that are authoritative and understand, or that we have seen to be, at the top of their game when it comes to a certain thing. So in order for you to even get there, that means you have to do a lot of back work to get to that point where you have such ethos to sit and speak authoritatively on a matter.
Let me forgive me. I'm visualizing a young pastor.
Yes.
Who happens to stand on the platform of a very, very senior person.
Yes.
To the same audience. The senior person, by virtue of who he is, can say, you people, I'm telling you, change this way. And by virtue of who he or she is, the people are fine with it. What you are saying is that the same words, if the younger pastor said it, could lead to trouble.
Absolutely. So the younger pastor now needs to do a few things. Knowing that he doesn't have the same ethos, he needs to understand his best means to communicate to that particular audience. Perhaps he should come to the audience as, yes, I know I am young, but that actually means that I am more adept at XYZ, which is why I can speak from this perspective. So you have to speak from your perspective and speak confidently in that manner. So this young pastor cannot go and act like a well-experienced pastor because there's no depth there. What he can, however, do is say, look, I am from the TikTok generation. I understand the TikTok generation. The TikTok generation is the future. Now, we want to make sure that the message of Christ carries on to the future. So how do we want to do it? In that, I can assure you that the older, well-experienced pastor cannot necessarily compete with him on that perspective because this is his ethos. He is from the TikTok generation. He understands it intrinsically because this is his generation. And that is the ethos that he stands with to speak confidently on what he has to speak. Now, from there is what we call the logos. Being able to have evidence, data, and this is where storytelling comes in. When we talk about communication, storytelling is absolutely vital. Any communicator, if you really sit down and want to get into details, they'll start talking about, you need to tell stories. Now we're in a world where you tell stories. But the story you tell, the information you provide, and it's actually interesting because that brings us back to the issue of misinformation, where people are faking things just to look like, they know what they are saying or to present a false image of things. But essentially, once you have that logos combined with the ethos, Then you add the element of pathos, which is essentially the appeal, the emotional appeal. You have what we call just like the perfect triad of rhetorical persuasion. So sorry for taking us back
But
to
that's
school,
okay.
but
I mean, in comms class, they called it the Aristotle triangle.
exactly,
Those three
exactly,
things
exactly.
can't miss.
Absolutely. And when you
Right.
add the kairos element of timeliness, which was another thing that I was going to add, that timing is everything. You may have a message to communicate. And when I say a message, I want people to remember that we're not just talking about words spoken out. We are talking about engagements, activities. You know, you may have something to do. It will not land today because the moment is not right. So you do have to have an element of discernment to understand, which is why you actually have to take a step back and understand the audience, understand your message. You know, all of this to prevent your information from being misunderstood. So if you have that, you know that, okay, the time is right now because it's the beginning of the year. People are more likely to be open to new ideas because they want to face the year with, new things. You know that it's better than doing that than maybe doing it just before Christmas when people are no longer paying attention. So that elements of Kairos ties everything together. You know, so to prevent that misunderstanding, you do, even though we don't think about it on the daily, you do have to use those elements in order to be a good communicator.
Wow. So in a couple of minutes, you have given us the 3+1 components of good messaging. Yes. You are saying that the person that is delivering the message must have the clout, the ethos must be
absolutely
recognized as an authority to speak on the subject. Mm-hmm. Don't just go pick somebody's nose and come and talk. And then the person must also have the facts, the logos, absolutely, the data to back what they are saying. Say 17 out of 20 people do things this way. That backs it. Yes. Then the third thing you are saying is that they must have the pathos. They can't come and stand there and say, so I am telling you, this is springboard. There must be some emotion. They must move people.
Absolutely. You have to move people. You have to, and I think pathos is what people overplay sometimes.
Right.
So when you talk about people who are empty communicators, people who usually go very high on the emotional appeal, but they are exciting. They come and they speak very vociferously and with their hands. It's when you leave, then you're like, wow, this is good. Then you sit there and you say,
what is that?
How do you say? I can't remember because he didn't actually communicate. It was exciting because he was doing all that. But in the pathos, he was saying all the right things, but the logos was missing.
And you're saying that on top of all that, there must also be the kairos, which is the timing. Some messages a week earlier and a week later will backfire.
Absolutely.
But the right timing makes things work.
Absolutely.
This is the masterclass in communications on Springboard, your virtual university, with my dear sister and friend Cynthia Ofori-Dwumfuo, helping us to appreciate the fact that we don't just stand up and go out there to communicate. We must know the audience. We must know our message. We must have the ethos, the logos, and the pathos, and the kairos on top of it. We'll go for a break, and when we come back, we'll be looking now at the cure. We've talked about the prevention, how to make sure you don't go out there and go and create problems for all of us. But after you have gotten it so badly wrong, what do you do? Where do you start from? And if somebody is listening and you know a friend who did something at work that 2 years later is still struggling with the consequences, let's talk about how do you revive your image after you have messed things up. Let's also look at the technological implications of this trend in communications and how the everyday professional can order their lives right. I'll tell you a story about a very angry professional who said, who went to school on this subject, you or me? And find out how our clients have changed so much and are so knowledgeable. This is Springboard, your virtual university, brought to you by the Springboard Roadshow Foundation and proudly sponsored by MTN Pulse and the Enterprise Group, with media support from the Multimedia Group and the Graphic Business. Before we go on break, I mentioned enterprise. Let me just tell you an enterprise advantage tip, which is about bundling up for savings. So the question for the day is, how can bundling insurance policies save you money? And the answer is very simple. When you combine your home, auto, or other policies with the same insurer, you often get discounts. So bundling is a smart way to maximize coverage while enjoying significant savings on your overall insurance costs. As for cost, when you save costs, you always be happy. The number to call for enterprise is 030-263-4777. Enterprise, your advantage. Let's talk after this break.
Hello? Bye.
Well, everybody's heard about the bird. Bird, bird is the word. Bird is the word. Don't you know about the bird? Well, everybody knows that the bird is the word. Bird is the word.
To consider the implications.
Hello? Everybody knows that the bird is the word.
Whether it's 1924, 2024, or 2124, we've always known that you are driven by your sense of safety and well-being. It is what drives us to see you through from start to finish, from small to big. And in the last 100 years, as you have evolved, so have we also expanded to serve you in many ways. From cradle to grave, with expertise in insurance, life, pensions, properties, health, and for those beautiful memorable goodbyes. It's 2024, and in all our markets, our pedigree is recognized, our strength respected, our expertise valued, and our solutions sought by all who desire an advantage in life. Experience the time-tested and truly trusted 100 years legacy of Ghana's oldest insurer. Take charge of your future now. Insurance, life, pensions, property management, funeral services, health insurance. Enterprise, your advantage.
Welcome back to Springboard, your virtual university, and to this very exciting conversation about trends in communication and tips for everyday professionals. Whatever you do, there's something in this conversation for you. Springboard is brought to you by the Springboard Roadshow Foundation and proudly sponsored by MTN Pulse and the Enterprise Group with media support from the Multimedia Group and the Graphic Communications Group. And talking about Springboard, if you are a young person looking for prospects in the job market, pause to ask yourself, have you considered agriculture, agribusiness, and the technical and vocational areas? Some amazing things are happening in those spaces. And if you are young, between the ages of 15 and 35, especially if you're a young lady and you would like to find out what's in that space for you, ask about Ghana Grows, and you will find out that there's so much you can learn and explore in those spaces. The number to call the Ghana Grows call center, call or WhatsApp 030-8255-775, 030-8255-775, and find out how you can step out into the world of agriculture, agribusiness, and ATVET to explore your career opportunities. Cynthia, back to our conversation before we go to the cure for the person who is in communications crisis.
Right.
Have you ever had an experience in agriculture or agribusiness?
Mm-hmm. So when we were very young, I think this was a trend in the 90s, early 90s. My mother had a chicken coop actually. I shouldn't say poultry because it makes it sound like a big farm, but a chicken coop at the end of the house in the backyard somewhere that I was partly responsible for, taking care of, cleaning out the sawdust with the poop, feeding, all of that. So that was quite an interesting experience as a child. And then of course, as you know, when the chickens are old, participating in the
consumption.
Of course, in the consumption and the cooking of it. So that was my experience. And then back then too, we used to have school farms. I don't know if they do that now, but
They do.
I think it was a very good experience when we were young, cultivating vegetables and, being able to say at the end of the day, I grew this tomato and taking it home, from school. So if they are not doing it, they should continue.
Yeah, some of the lands have been encroached on. But
You see,
talking
the
about
schools,
school
yeah.
farms,
Yeah.
the downside of school farms was the practice then, I don't know if they still do it, of punishing students to go and weed in the farms. It was not ill-intended, but from the comms point of view, I suppose that if you associate something with punishment, it can't be an aspiration for you.
That is absolutely true. Absolutely true.
Let's stick with comms and come back to, so if you just joined us, this is a conversation about communication trends and everyday tips that any professional can use, no matter the field that you are in. My guest is Cynthia Ofori-Dwumfuo. She's a comms consultant and she's been in this for several years. Cynthia, tell us about the cure. Before going to the break, we're talking about preventing miscommunication and mistakes. Let's now come to the cure. You climbed the stage, you addressed your staff. You didn't even know anybody was recording. It's gone out there. It's a blast. The whole world is driving at your neck. It's gone very bad. You've hurt people you didn't intend to hurt. People who know you are surprised and they're saying, did you really say that? What do? Do you deny it? Do you try and hold a press conference? How do you cure miscommunication?
So that's where, communications consultants just drink water and sit down and say, yay. Because every single crisis has a different approach. So some crises can be managed easier by engagement. Some crises you have to face up to it and speak up and be bold in your mistake. Other crises, because it depends on what the mistake is about, right? Other crises as well depend on the person. So let's say you've gone on stage and said the wrong thing as maybe a CEO of a company, and the wrong thing actually may be wrong according to a certain group of people, but right according to your company's values and ethos and interests. Now, what happens is people are very unforgiving online, especially. So this video goes viral, and let's say it's impacting maybe some of your investors, it's impacting some of your customers who may not understand. With a scenario like that, as comms people, we often would advise and say, one, understand the reactions. What are people saying? What are their actual concerns at what you've said as a CEO on the stage? Because oftentimes people rush to try to make up, oh, I'm sorry. Oh, we should have done this better. Absolutely. The apology is important, especially when you are wrong. But even how you give the apology and what you say in the apology can make it worse.
Oh my goodness.
So you have to understand the reactions. What are they reacting to? Are they reacting to perhaps the way you said it flippantly? Because some people may be offended by how you said the thing, not necessarily the information you're presenting.
The logos was right.
Exactly.
But the patterns was wrong.
It was wrong.
Okay.
So in that case, if you understand the reactions to your miscommunication, you're better able to sit down and say, okay, so people were offended because we didn't say it right. Or people were offended because what we are saying goes against their values. Now, are these our customers? Are these important to us as a business? If so, how do we react considering that this is the business's path? So what happens is in a crisis, there are a lot of decisions that have to be made. It's not just about apologies because the decisions would impact moving forward. So what happens is the reason why when there's a crisis, there's the involvement of all the senior people, because at that point in time, the business understands that any action or inaction will make or break the business moving forward. It's not just about the apology. So if in this case, it is on a matter that, so for instance, a company has decided that they would only use sustainable raw materials, and perhaps their biggest customer uses some kind of GMO processed raw materials. So the question is the company going to, as young people like to say, stand on business? As in decide that this is the direction we've taken, and so we are going to stand to it and decide that we are going to use sustainable raw materials. In that case, we come out and explain that looking at the future, we want to, protect the world. We want to be a responsible company, and we think that this decision makes sense, and we understand your concerns. And then knowing that when they say that, that big investor might pull out, and there are consequences for that. And in fact, that's another thing. Consequences of our communication styles is, and it's very important to understand those consequences. And that comes up in crisis a lot. So in that case, you are making a decision based on the reaction. Now, in another case where it will be a blunder, the honest truth is the apologies are good. People often want to hear an apology. But in apologizing, everything about the apology, the wording of the apology, the format of the apology makes a lot of difference.
What about the posture of the person
The
communicating
posture
the
of
apology?
it makes all the difference. So in some cases,
Pause. What
yeah,
about the
the
setting?
setting,
The setup.
everything. Because you go and sit in a very comfortable place and say the apology, and people will be so upset because they'll say, look at him sitting in this place. He does not relate to us. He doesn't get what we are saying because he's just sitting there in a bubble.
Are these people being unreasonable?
So, admittedly, the world is a lot more sensitive now. That's partly, once again, a consequence of the times. People have so much information. People are so overstimulated. People are so in themselves that they are always looking at information as to how it pertains to them
So
and their personal interests.
how does the everyday professional understand this simple thing of going to say sorry? You must think of what color you wear,
Yes.
how you look,
Yes.
how your face must show that you are sorry. The setting must not be too too plush. No, these
So,
are. Somebody said to me, Epe, we're having a conversation about managing an issue. Somebody says, Epe, that level of detail.
Yeah.
How does the everyday person understand that?
Yeah.
It's not just what you say.
Yeah.
And how are they supposed to know if they haven't been trained in that way?
Yes. So this is where I would say that, one, you can't win all the time. And, that's one thing that you have to come to terms with. Not everybody would accept you or accept what you're saying in the manner that you want to say it. So, because of that, it is important to understand who you are talking to so that you talk to them in a manner that relates to them, knowing fully well that there are few people who will not understand what you're saying because of all the things they don't like about you. Those people do not matter to you. So it is important that how you present yourself, if your target are churchgoers, how you present yourself has to be important, has to relate to them. It's absolutely important that they can get you, they can engage with you so that they get your message. You are not necessarily speaking to people of other religious backgrounds. You're speaking to a specific set of people who are Christians. Now, if you start worrying about communicating to everybody, that's where you also have a lot of challenges because now, who are you focused on? You can't, and that's the thing about also trying to do too many things. You can't do too many, especially with this world now. People are concerned about trying to be everything and do everything, but you realize that the people who are really fantastic at, selling their. Let me even use Apple for instance. Why is Apple one of the biggest electronics company in the world? Because their communication is fantastic. When they come and they talk about the iPhone, it's such a simple message. It's not cluttered. They are speaking specifically to a certain type of person, the person who cares about using a phone that is luxurious, a phone that gives them pleasure. They are not talking to just anybody.
And they know.
They know, and they don't try. And ultimately, they are able to communicate to those people, knowing fully well that they can't win with everybody. So as a communicator, or not even as a communicator, as a regular person, you need to understand that.
You can't win always.
You can't win always.
So you must be very clear about who you're
Just
targeting.
be clear and understand that.
My final question on crisis management, and I'll go on to technology.
Yes.
So when is silence the best response?
So once again, silence is the best response if you look at the reaction and the reaction calls for silence. Sometimes the apology may rather incite more problems. So in this case, if it's very sensitive information and you cannot share further information, and in apologizing, you're causing more problems. Honestly, sometimes silence is best. And I say silence is best because it's also a timing issue. So sometimes silence is best in the moment, in the heat of the moment, because you need to let things die down. You need to observe, you need to listen, you need to hear people out. If you rush to speak, and that in fact is a general communication, a communication skill, don't be too in a hurry. Sometimes excitedly, you want to get out there, explain yourself, justify. Now, if you're too in a hurry, you might cause problems. You really need to learn to listen, observe, understand before you decide whether to
Observe.
Exactly.
understand
Yes.
before you do.
Before you decide to speak or not speak. Because sometimes in this world, it actually blows over.
Yes. Talking about blowing over, there's this unspoken, or sometimes spoken,
Yeah.
that news in our part of the world has a 1 week time span.
Yeah.
And so sometimes when it's not necessarily a communications issue of you haven't done anything wrong, but something happens been said about you that does not reflect the truth. Some argue that in trying to go and correct, you find out that what you thought everybody knew, people didn't know. Your reaction rather made the whole world know, and then now the thing becomes a front page story, and then it stays on the front page. Will that be another case where sometimes you just weigh the damage and see silence is better?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You really have to be circumspect. That ability to be discerning, oftentimes you can't get it right yourself, which is why we encourage people to look for professionals, especially companies. You know, in the heat of the moment, don't go making decisions when you need an expert to help you. Sometimes you need an outsider, and this could even apply in a personal situation. You need an outsider to give you a different perspective so that you know that, hold on, wait, don't speak yet. You know, so not every day. If the cycle is going and it's 1 week, wait and let it pass. Then you see before you know what to do next. Don't be too in a hurry, because now we are living a very sensational time. You know, everything is sensationalist. You could easily be caught in that. You know, it's like a whirlwind, and unfortunately, the world is also unforgiving. So if you make mistakes, and that's the unfortunate thing about the communication trends of the day. It's more unforgiving than before. So if you make a mistake, you might end up actually causing more problems that would impact you for the future. Because as we know, the internet never forgets. So things may die down now, but your response and your reaction will forever be on the internet for anybody who clicks.
I hate to admit this, but I think that our
Yeah.
friends in the political space would benefit a lot from this conversation.
I don't think they care.
No. I don't think that it was intended for them, but it's a fact that if anyone is
Yes.
seeking public
Yes.
office and listening,
Yes.
they would understand what to do and
Absolutely.
what not to do. Let me move on to technology. You say the internet never forgets.
Yes.
Let's touch on aspects of technological development that are influencing the way we communicate and that people should be aware of, either as enablers or as, if for nothing, what they should be also conscious about as potential costly
Right.
developments. But let me look maybe a bit more at enablers. What
Right.
could help us in the course of our work?
So I would say that the easiest thing that is so common but people don't appreciate really is social media. And social media allows us to do so many things. It gives us community. And I'm not just talking about, Facebook, Instagram, but there's community where you join a group. So let's say moms, there are moms communities. There are communities for people who are suffering from diseases. There are communities for all kinds of things. If you think outside of the excitement of social media, you realize that social media is a tool that is giving people an opportunity to explore beyond their armchairs and also get perspectives that they would never have otherwise, or even feel a belonging that they wouldn't have felt. So you have young people who are sitting here who are participating, or even older people who are participating in communities that involve people from several places. They are just bound together by one interest or one malaise or one whatever it is. So that level of community comes from social media. Then there's also the ability to influence or be influenced. So social media has enabled, a building of influence. So everybody has, and without realizing it, people don't realize that they have influence. Your small group of friends that you engage with on social media, as you share and they share, you are influencing each other. So social media is such a powerful tool because the people you surround yourself with on social are ultimately influencing your perspective on life. The things that you talk about, you don't realize it, but everything you say or do is a result of what you are consuming. And if the people around you are sharing and engaging in a particular thing, you tend to now speak or engage or see things from that perspective. So social media has become that tool that you have to understand how you're consuming it, understand your place in it. So apart from being influenced or being an influencer, there's also the fact that you can participate. you can generate. And it's so different because in the past, all of these things were in other people's hands. Now social media and digital tools have given us the opportunity to do these things directly. And I think it's just amazing. Just 20 years ago, it was unthinkable for someone to be an influencer from Ghana doing certain things. Or even let me take it out of that context. It was unthinkable that a 24-year-old, I know a certain 24-year-old who currently works remotely with a Swedish company from Ghana, got the job from Ghana, earns money that she would not have had in Ghana.
Yeah.
And it's
very familiar.
it's ultimately, and I always say that I can't imagine the world when I was in university, if I was growing up in this time. The world is ultimately everybody's oyster, partly because of the power of social media. And we are not just talking Facebook and Instagram, talking all formats, including WhatsApp and whatnot.
So today I go to, let's say, Practical Christianity Hangout on Wednesday, and I'm reminded that when you are addressing online worshippers or virtual participants in the Hangout, look into camera and talk to them directly. Dare not to look elsewhere. Look them in the face, address them. When you are picking questions, ask their questions, because they are as important, they are far more than those in the hall. And Cynthia, the part that shocks me is that there are people who are more consistent attendees virtually than some of your closest people in person.
Yes.
And you're talking about influence, you're talking about participation. There are people who know everything you've said for the past 10 years and they don't miss. Let's go on to what all this that we described, the kind of customer, consumer, participant, constituent. Let me add my friends so that they
stay in the conversation.
Constituents, clients,
right,
congregants, consumers. What kind of consumers have we created, or has the world created as a result of this high-paced, high-consuming, interesting expectations, development in comms and technology?
I'm going to use the analogy of a baby, because I guess I'm a new mother. And, we've created a customer that is like a baby. They want what they want, when they want it, how they want it, now.
Instantaneously at once.
Instantaneously and at once. So if they don't get it, they will react in the way that they want to react. So you have to understand that. You have to understand that sometimes the baby will cry, and you have to leave the baby to cry because you are getting ready to maybe change the diaper. You have to understand that in communicating with people, there are different formats and different ways. So in understanding that, I think that it changes your perspective, and perspective really is everything. It's everything.
Will there be instances where you also have to appreciate that this baby that is crying, if you don't provide them with a proposal in 2 hours like they are asking for, somebody else will provide it?
Well, that is true. Exactly.
With technology and get it from you.
And people, so right now, because people want what they want, you need to understand, what do you want to give them at the end of the day? What do you have to offer? I mean, if you don't understand what you have to offer, how do you communicate it and how do you offer it? So, one thing people don't realize is we actually have to do a lot of thinking and reflecting. You don't realize you are thinking and reflecting, but as you are planning, that's actually what you are doing. How do you sell that message? How do you present your company? How do you present yourself to your customer in a way that the customer would actually absorb what you're saying? In a way that the company, so I'll give you an example. So are you sharing customer data? Customers want to know what is happening with my information at any point in time. Back in the day, customers did not care.
Oh, yes.
Now customers want to know every single thing about their money. They want to know every single thing about their engagement with you, about their activities. Are you providing it for them? And are you providing it when they need it? Yes or no? That is part of
option A is this, option B is this, option C is this. Say no, I want a combination of A, C, and X.
Exactly. And you need to know that your customer is not a simple customer. Your customer is a sophisticated customer.
How if you don't explain to my medical practitioner friend who says, I was going to take the person's vitals and the person says, I know already.
They will tell you that Google
my watch has told me, I know all the vitals, and he says the painful things that the person was right.
Yes. So now I would say that the medical doctor now needs to sit down and say, since my customers, that is my patients, already have this information. How do I engage with them about the information that they already have? Because the customer now is not looking for, tell me what my this is. They're looking for, what does it mean? So you as a doctor now needs to tell them, what does it mean? Because they already know their vitals. You are not telling them new information. So what does it mean?
Require re-education?
I think to some extent, yes. It's also in the manner that we are oriented and we are taught in school. And I genuinely can see that times are changing. So, just the format of education is making people more primed to understanding that it's no longer basic. Now you need to do a little more to engage with your audience or your customer. So I think that is just by virtue of the day that the day and age we are in. People are getting, the educational system is getting there. But otherwise, for established professionals, my advice is always be open-minded. My advice is always be observant, open-minded, to read wide, explore. When I say read wide, people think it's just about taking a book every day before you sleep, read 2 chapters. No, it's also about, whilst you're eating your lunch, scroll on the internet, click a link about something.
Some podcasts or something.
Listen to a podcast. Perfect. I love podcasts. I listen to podcasts when I'm doing all kinds of things. And sometimes I even go back, and that's how people listen to PCH. They will listen to 10 shows at a time, because they are busy doing something and they put it on in the background and they are listening whilst they're doing something.
Nice way to multitask.
Exactly.
I'll tell you what,
nice way to
Cynthia,
multitask.
I could do this with you 3 days non-stop and I still would enjoy it. But we run out of time.
Thank you.
If you ask me my favorite lesson from this conversation, I'm sure somebody will expect me to say the ethos, the
exactly.
logos, the pathos, and the kairos. Yeah. I'm sure you have your own favorite lesson from Cynthia. And so let's continue this interesting debate on my socials, her socials, Springboard socials. Everywhere we can have this conversation. Let's continue to talk about communication trends and tips for everyday professionals. And tell me how this relates to you in particular. And that's the part I would like to hear. For you in particular and what you do, what have you learned from this and what will you do differently going forward? But Cynthia, my favorite lesson is not in what you said, but the look on your face and how you seem to be loving what you do. Do you love what you do?
I do indeed.
It's obvious.
I do.
Look into this camera and speak to somebody as we close. Your closing thoughts on finding yourself.
Yeah.
Just finding who you are.
Right.
You are not a pastor, you're a commerce professional. You found yourself and you're enjoying it. So look into camera and talk to somebody about finding yourself and living out your dream.
Yes. I think that in order for you to be fulfilled in life, at whatever it is you want to do, you need to understand yourself. Nobody can do that for you. You need to sit with yourself, get to know yourself, understand your quirks, understand your whys, and then determine who you want to be to the world. These are actions that they don't teach us in school. They don't teach us when we are, roaming around with our friends. They are things that you get to learn on your own. Sitting with yourself is absolutely vital. Once you sit with yourself, you get to know yourself. You're better able to present the best version of yourself to whichever audience that you're presenting it to. So get to know yourself. You'll be surprised how much of a difference it will make if you just take some time to reflect and be on your own. So.
I am still in myself and with Cynthia Ofori-Dwumfuo. Thank you so much, Cynthia, for making time.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah.
My pleasure.
Let's do another one again and have some time together.
Indeed.
All right. So if you have just been with us in the past hour, it's been Cynthia Ofori-Dwumfuo, board chair of the Springboard Ratio Foundation and comms consultant with several years packed behind her. She loves what she does and it's evident in every word that she speaks. Find yourself and also live out your dream. And talking about comms, we need to know what to do before, during, and after in every communication. Prepare for it, deliver it well, and after you deliver to know what to do, if it goes right or if it goes wrong. But whatever it is, this has been absolutely instructive and beneficial for the everyday professional. My name is Albert Okra. I'm thanking you on behalf of Team Springboard and our sponsors, MTN Pulse and the Enterprise Group, with our media partners, the Multimedia Group and the Graphic Communications Group. This has been Springboard, your virtual university. I matriculated you at the beginning, and now I hereby graduate you, and I say, God bless you, and God bless you.
you